Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. You are watching the Briggs and Mortar Heights Facebook Live. My name is Michelle Briggs. I'm with Strata, Texas. I always say I'm the realtor for you. And our guest today, I love her. And, she has a topic that we really don't think about as business owners, small business owners. So today we have Karla Aghedo. She is the managing attorney of the Aghedo firm. Hello, Karla. How are you?
I'm doing great, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me today. It's super exciting to be on.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about you and then we'll get into the good stuff.
Awesome. So, very quickly, I'm a wife. I'm a mother of three, including a newborn of 15 weeks. You might hear her try to contribute to this live in the background. So, that's what's keeping me busy these days. And then, of course, as the managing attorney of the Aghedo firm.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? It is okay for her to participate. I love it.
Thank you.
All right. So not only are you a white collar criminal defense attorney, you also assist and support small businesses with their risk management, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So, as a white collar criminal defense attorney, I help folks who are under investigation by either a federal or state agency. But what I love to do is come in before the government becomes knocking and help people get their house in order. And that really means doing a risk assessment to identify areas where we can tighten up policies and procedures to prevent things that could potentially go awry and raise an inquiry. So that's what I love to do.
Got it. So, I put a note in here about new employee handbook.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. So one of the things you want to have as you are expanding your team, whether you are a small business or a solopreneur who's out there doing it yourself, maybe you're going big on social media, trying to be a social media influencer, you want to make sure that as you're expanding your team, particularly with, for example, virtual assistants, right, that you have your policies and procedures in place about how that person's supposed to conduct themselves when they're working in your business. So the best way to do that is to have those policies and procedures in an employee handbook and make sure that you've provided that handbook at the beginning of the employment relationship and that you get that individual to sign off that they've read and they will abide by these policies.
right, because they have access to your files, your clients, your all of that information. So it's really important as a small business owner that you have this sign. I mean, as a realtor and you have assistants, and there's plenty of realtors that are in the United States or in Houston that have the virtual assistants or have assistants, have buyers reps. I mean, as realtors, we think that we are a small business. However, I don't know that anyone really talks to us about the risk management, about the new employee handbook and things like that.
Absolutely. And it's so easy to try to plug someone into your team to make life easier. But if something goes wrong, it gets really hard. So, one of the main things you want to have in place is that confidentiality agreement to make sure that the information that you're sharing is protected. Working with realtors in the past, I think you have a fiduciary duty to the person who's hired you to be their agent. And so sometimes they're sharing things with you that they don't want disclosed to the other side as part of the transaction that you all are involved in. So if you've got an assistant who's also assisting you, you want to make sure that that person has signed a confidentiality agreement with you and understands how your client's information needs to be handled and managed.
Right. And that really kind of takes us into that privacy policy, right? Having a strong privacy policy, not just that confidentiality agreement. But I think that, am I speaking right saying that the privacy policy is a whole nother thing?
It sure is. And I know it sounds like a lot, but I promise it is so important to your business today. So, that privacy policy is all about how we're going to manage our clients' information. So, let's say the confidentiality agreement is you can't disclose our client list, you can't disclose our proprietary information, you can't disclose how we do our business. But the client information and the privacy policy especially comes up when we're dealing with electronic communications. Okay, so whether there's going to be some sort of breach, you want to make sure that you have a strong policy in place so that people's personal information, social security numbers, credit cards, bank drafts, right? That might be something that might impact a realtor, for example, is the banking information to complete the transaction or to pay for the $250 inspection, those sorts of things, right? You want to make sure that you've got a solid policy in place for how we're going to handle people's private and sensitive information. You also want to make sure that your privacy policies are stated on your website. Easy for someone to pull and understand exactly how any of their private information is going to be treated once it's in your business. So
Right.
it's a really important piece of the story.
See? You don't think about that stuff. You just, I think there's a lot of small businesses out there that do have the 1 to 2, 3 employee, 3 employees, and they don't think anything of it.
Absolutely.
I don't know, my dad, when he was working, he's a master plumber, it was him and his putty wagon.
Yeah.
And, he'd get helpers out every now and then. He used to have a team member that was with him full time that ran a separate truck. I don't think he had anything like this.
I totally understand. And he might say to you, gosh, Michelle, you're making my life complicated. We just fix pipes, right? But in 2021, there's so much that's happening electronically, so much that's happening digitally, and you'd be surprised at the data breaches that happen to large companies, but also smaller companies. So for example, if you are a plumber and you're writing things down, keeping notes, you want to make sure you've got a secure process for where you're putting those physical papers that might have someone's credit card information on it, or that might have even a phone number and a name associated with that, can be used in ways that can breach someone's identity. The other corollary to this is your social media policy. So many times we're trying to build our business by being out on social media, and it's hashtag realtor for you, right? Right? But if you have someone now on your team trying to help you build that business, you want to make sure they're clear about what they can and cannot post on social media associated with your brand, Realtor for You. You could always tell them, hey, post and share, we're on a property right now, we're going live, or we just closed on this deal. All of that is great, right? But if they're also posting and using your hashtag when they're at home making peanut butter sandwiches and not wearing all, I don't know, a whole, t-shirt with holes in it or something, you just want to be clear with your young, cool, hip employee about what the social media policy is in relation to your brand. Because at the end of the day, your business is your brand is your business, and you've got to protect it. So just make sure your employee knows what's the social media policy around here.
I love it. So do you have, when someone calls you and says, hey, I need this social media, I don't know. It's almost like, do you just have a promulgated form? Do you have just something like I know you don't, but something told me like, can you have something that just like it's already written and you just throw in hashtag realtor for you?
I can absolutely help make your life easier. So one of the things we want to make sure we do is we have these policies tailored to the business that you're in, because it's nothing worse when the government comes knocking than having a off-the-shelf policy that doesn't make any sense for the business that you operate in. And in fact, that's one of the pieces of guidance that has been issued by the federal government when they talk about compliance policies and risk. The government is not going to be happy to find something that is cookie cutter off the shelf. But yes, I can help you customize that policy pretty quickly, get you up and going, so that it works for the business that you're in. Absolutely.
Right. And it's any small business.
Yes.
There's
exactly.
no limit to who you could support around risk management, around the social media policy, and the privacy policy and confidentiality. Because if you sell a widget and you have a team member that's boxing and shipping that widget, right?
Absolutely. You want to make sure they're clear about how things should work around here. Yep.
Exactly. Well, if you are just joining us, my name is Michelle Briggs. I'm with Strata, Texas. Our guest today is Karla Aghedo. She is the managing attorney for the Aghedo firm. And we were just sharing about risk management, small business owners, and how Karla supports you getting that established in the sense of like a new employee handbook. We were just talking about social media. We were just talking about the privacy policy, confidentiality policy, all of those things that small business owners may not think it's a big deal because they hired their cousin.
Absolutely.
Right? And it really is. So if you are a small business owner and you want to learn more and find out what it really looks like to implement this for you and your cousin, your virtual assistant, if you're a one-man show and you have an assistant, there's a lot of realtors that are on my Facebook page. So, they have virtual assistants, they have marketing assistants. And I don't know, it's just not a common conversation that we have.
Absolutely.
So if you are watching this and you have raised your eyebrows to this conversation, #risk. So put below #risk, and I will have Karla reach out to you directly. Oh, well, she's an attorney. I will get you Karla's information so you can contact her. Right? That was implemented years ago, and I guess the purpose of it was to stop the ambulance chasers.
I guess so.
Terrible analogy, and I apologize. But I mean, just like, I don't know, but you have to call her. So #risk, and I will get a hold of you to get you Karla's information for you to reach out to her. Now, one of the last things I like this conversation because we don't think about it. I mean, we're limited, and we're talking about gifts, like your gift policy.
Mm-hmm.
And we are limited on what we can provide for referrals for people that send us, someone that's looking to buy or sell their home. So what does that look like for a small business owner? How do they know they're breaking that regulation or rule, whatever the law is?
Absolutely. And by the way, also, if you're just joining us, we are here with my chief executive officer, who's 15 weeks old, and she makes contributions throughout the program. I think she just gave us "you're doing great." So anyway.
Love it.
Yes. So what you just described as limits on gifts is about conflict of interest, and also the potential of undue influence of that gift. And so as a regulated industry, they've come up with a standard for realtors. They've come up with standards in other professions as well. But oftentimes there's a question about what it looks like for a particular industry and how that should work. So one of the things I think about is, are we conferring a benefit on our employee? And if so, is that something that needs to be reported as compensation to the IRS? Okay. So essentially, as an employer, when you are providing a wage or a bonus or anything like that, you know that you're reporting that on your forms, right? You're either issuing this person a W-2 or a 1099 so that they can report things on their taxes. Well, if you're giving them, $3,000 worth of services out of the company's kitty, that might be something that you need to report as compensation. Unfortunately, one of my earliest cases as a white-collar lawyer involved a family-owned business where they were doing great work, okay, and got to the point where they had government contracts. But one of the challenges that comes up is people need help, right? And the company may be doing what they think is in the best interest of their employees or their family, but the government might come back later and say, that was a benefit that was conferred. You should have reported that. And so you always want to make sure that when your gifts reach a certain threshold, you want to evaluate whether this should be reported as compensation or a benefit that went to that employee. So just something to think about.
It is. It really is. Because you think, I mean, I don't know, a flooring company, and they decide that they're going to put new floors in their mom's house because she's
Yep.
80 and she needs a new floor. She's tripping on it.
Yep.
They're not going to charge her for that. So,
True.
it's because look, I own the company, and my mom needs a new floor. Who wouldn't do that?
Yep. You can, I don't want to veer into providing tax advice, but in that situation, one thing to think about is potentially writing that off as a donation that's being made, like a gift. We can make gifts up to $500, depending on the year. I believe in taxable year 2020, it was 500, right? And you don't necessarily need a receipt or documentation for that, right?
Right.
But yeah, if you are giving a benefit to this individual just to help them out, that could be considered a charitable gift. If it's going to an employee, that's where that question of whether this benefit or compensation comes in.
Got it. Okay. Okay. I understand. So it is, I mean, again, I'm sure people are like, what, a white collar, criminal defense attorney? Why are you bringing them to Tips Tuesday? Well, it's because of the risk management. It's because the small
Absolutely.
business owners. I mean, I've been a small business owner for going on 3 years now. Not one person has had this conversation with me.
I love it. I'm so glad that we could talk about something that's real. I think a lot of times when I tell people I'm a white collar criminal defense attorney, their response is, that sounds cool, and I hope I never have to call you.
Right. Exactly.
But
I love you.
the reality is that I can also advise on the front end, before the indictment, before the investigation, before the letter that says you're a target of a federal investigation, right? That gets everyone completely freaked out.
Right.
Let's just back that thing up a little bit and bring in someone who can advise based on risks that are identified. Where can we tighten this up? Where can we make this better so that we reduce the likelihood that there would be an inquiry? That's what I like to do.
Right. I mean, yes, exactly. Because you can train someone, you can train someone and train someone and train someone, and just one day they're not having a great day and they just say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Gotta go. And then
Michelle, you look worried.
I'm just thinking, it's so because I managed teams for 15 years,
Yep.
in the title industry, and it was constant. You're constantly training and bettering them in the position that they're in, and when you have that business to consumer, there's always you're managing, right, and you're checking in with everyone every morning to see how they're doing, and it's intentional. Because if they're not having a great day, maybe let's not let them take phone calls.
That's so real, Michelle.
You
Super
know,
smart. Absolutely.
just like, let's just put you right here. You know what? Just process this side of things today. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
and you have to think about that stuff as a small business owner, because you are a small business. If something happens, right, you get the letter and you have to call you, right? And then they have to call you. It's going to cost them more in the long run for that piece of paper that comes across, right?
Absolutely. And again, having strong policies in place also helps you deal with civil liability. And people might be thinking more about that. Oh, I'm going to get sued. This employee might sue me. This customer might sue me. They might think of that as a higher risk than having a federal investigation from the Department of Justice. And you might be right about that, right? Because it's everyday interactions with people that result in civil lawsuits. Putting that strong employee handbook in place absolutely helps decrease your civil liability risk as well. And so that's absolutely something that I also can help with.
I love it. Okay, so we are nearing the end. On Tips Tuesday, we always give a tip. So Karla, what is your tip for us today?
My tip is know your risk. So so that you can train your team to make sure that you've got the policies and procedures in place to avoid those pitfalls that make for a really bad day.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, you guys, thank you for watching Briggs and Mortar Heights Facebook Live. I'm Michelle Briggs. This is Karla Aghedo with the Aghedo firm. #risk. I will reach out to you. I will get you Karla's information. All right, you guys, I always ask you, follow me on Facebook, Instagram. Tips Tuesdays, the first, second, and third Tuesday of the month. Starting April this month, we are going to be doing a fourth Tuesday, and it's called Listings, Loans, and Lattes. I'm still getting the name down. So with Jonathan Coaster with Envoy Mortgage. So we're excited about that. Karla, thank you again